Hey, it's Andre Johnson here with Deal Mastery. I'm here with one of our mastermind students, Fuzz King. How are you, Fuzz?
I'm doing pretty well, Andre.
Now, I know your name really is Ian King, but I of course call you Fuzz. Now, do I get to call you Fuzz just because you know and love me, or do you introduce yourself as Fuzz to everyone that you meet? I never asked you that question before.
I usually introduce myself as Fuzz now because it's how a lot of people know me, and it's how almost everyone really knows me
Okay.
since college days. And it just makes it a little bit easier when because if you say Fuzz to someone and then someone else is like, "Oh, it's Ian," like who? So I
Okay.
try to keep it consistent. It doesn't work very well, but in the end, it's not a huge deal.
All right, cool. Fair. You'll answer to both. Is the
I
okay?
absolutely
All
will.
right, cool. All right, so let's bring people into Fuzz's world and share your story. And I've known you for a handful of years now. I remember you and your former partner sitting in the deals meetup, and I think it had been at least a year, year and a half, maybe even 2 years, Fuzz. And I would always come around and say, hey, how you doing? And do you have any deals to present tonight? Any deals to pitch tonight? No, no, no. And then I, I couldn't tell if you guys were just there, for the entertainment value of deals meetup at the time, or if you guys, were interested in actually investing. Because I don't know, I couldn't really get, more than a couple words out of, you two. But I want you to share your story up to your decision to come to Deals Meetup. What got you interested in real estate, and kind of let everyone into your world.
Sure. Well, the basics, I had been in and around construction since, I guess, 2001,
Okay.
when I was working on a developer's crew. My father was an electrician for 20 or 30 years, among a number of other things. And, I had kind of just learned a whole bunch about the industry, but never, it was always sort of on the outside here and there. And then a college friend of mine, Jenny, called me up one day and she said, "Hey, you know a decent amount about a lot of this." And she had some money, but she was short on time, and I had some time and some knowledge. So decided, come down to the area into the DMV. She lived in and around DC, and we'll start going to some meetings, set up a business, try to figure out a way to get into buying holds was the original intention. With some rehabbing on my end, and it did end up doing that. We ended up picking up three, and then since have gone our separate ways, and life happens and things of that nature. But we ended up joining with a couple of the RIAs in the area, and heard by word of mouth to come to yours, and came in and sat down. And obviously, it was the whole entirely different entity that we got into there, and realized how much more useful it was in a lot of ways than the just straight information services, because we were getting real hands-on knowledge and numbers and things of that nature. And then it took us a little bit longer to find our first deal and decide to pull the trigger. And then when we did, we ended up picking up about three properties, and we're both into doing that, but it didn't work out as well as we'd hoped. And then I moved on from there, and we split. She actually still does have the properties.
Well, before you continue, so a couple of things I want to actually highlight that are so super important that you just probably have taken for granted, and it's something that, quite honestly, Fuzz, that if I didn't point this out, everyone listening and watching would have glossed over as well. And it's so critically important for not only new investors, but also experienced investors in terms of the growth of their business. So one of the things that I really believe in is that none of us can be an expert at everything, right? So, you've heard of the phrase, the old axiom, jack of all trades, master of none, right? And so
Yes.
none of us can really master everything. It's really one of the reasons why my company is called Deal Mastery, because it's an ideal. It's not something that we actually can achieve by ourselves, okay? But you can achieve mastery if you are willing to submit that you have weaknesses, and you're willing to submit that there's some other either people or systems or partners that can complement my weaknesses, okay, and then therefore strengthen me to be a greater whole, okay, to have a better opportunity to be successful as an organization, as a business, as a person, as an investor. And so when you just glossed over the fact that you had this college friend that had very little time but had some capital, and that you had, a lot of time and expertise and background in construction, what essentially the two of you did without even thinking it through from a necessarily business or, SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, threats, that whole business, principle. What the two of you did was essentially you guys decided that you were going to complement each other's weaknesses and align your strengths by doing so, therefore partnering in a way where you're able to accomplish something together that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do individually. And so that's one of the things that we believe in so wholeheartedly, with Deal Mastery, with attacking what we call the power of four, the 4 Fs: find, fund, fix, and flip. Like, it's hard to master all of those 4 things yourself. But if you work with partners that are experts in those specific areas, and even the subset of areas in some respects, that is, for example, funding, you have different ways to fund, raising money, different ways to fix properties, et cetera. If you partner, that gives everyone watching this particular interview an opportunity to take their business to new levels, whether you're new or whether you're experienced. If you stop trying to improve your own weaknesses and you start focusing on strengthening your strengths, right? And you partner with folks that are, masters at what they do, and then you bring them in areas where you're weak, that's when you'll see massive acceleration and growth of your businesses, whether you're new or whether you're experienced. So I wanted to point that out because, quite honestly, that's one of the reasons why you guys got some traction in the first place. Doesn't matter that you didn't hit a home run or a grand slam in the first few deals. The fact that you may have hit, 3 singles, okay, is okay too. But you might have never got off the bench if you thought you had to play the game by yourself. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does.
A lot of metaphors in there, but I try to hit everything for everybody to bring it home. So now continue forward. You guys, continue with that metaphor, hit a couple singles or 3 singles to get those properties. But, now with the path forward, where you guys, decided to move forward and do your own thing, pick it up from there in terms of, what you're doing with the growth of your business.
So what I'm looking at now is I joined the mastermind group. Was probably honestly one of the most important things that I could have done to, again, add other people in. And I hear it a lot, but I don't know if people really take it in, because your network really is your net worth. And so what I'm trying to do is find, my niche. I have also been in property management and a couple of things of that nature. And my end game is to put on some small to medium-sized multifamily. But in the interim, what I'm doing is I'm doing a bunch of property scouting in and around the Baltimore area for, currently mostly mastermind members, but a few other people, just to allow them to use my time and my knowledge to go in and get an understanding of a property as quick as possible, so they can decide on whether or not it's worth going into wholesale deals. And sometime this summer or early fall, I'm also going to get my inspection license for Maryland and be able to add that to the repertoire as well, which will get me into more houses, get me talking to more people, so that when, it'll give me more opportunities to find those real good deals that I'm looking for when I can pull the trigger. And then also pick up a couple of people that may want to go in on them with me initially. Because, I don't have a lot of capital, but I do have a lot of the know-how. I can help, I can run the projects, do the rehabs, things of that nature.
So the last point you just made, you have the know-how to do the rehab, run the projects and things of that nature. So now take us back to even those, first 3 properties and also projects that you have managed since then. I mean, just, you don't have to get too granular in the details of each individual project, because that's not necessarily, the take-home points. The take-home points for anyone listening is, what what skill sets were you able to bring to the table in your original partnership with Jenny? And then with the project management work you've done for other investors, big time rehabbers in the greater DMV area. So just talk through, the skill sets that you brought to the table and also honed and strengthened, as I just mentioned earlier, focus on strengthening your strength. So how have you grown that skill set over the last, 2-3 years?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I've learned a lot, especially with those first three properties. Only two of them required any rehab, but we had some fairly significant contractor issues that taught me that I need to just develop my skill set on managing them properly, and also being on top of all of the timelines and knowing, learning about permits and things in Baltimore, and just the little code specificities that you have to go through and do and things like that. And then, every time I do more work, I've run a couple of smaller projects for some people to try and, help them at the points where they are lacking understanding or don't have the time to be talking to their contractors, or to see that, for instance, like a window isn't properly put in and it's not going to, hash well with the other things, or some of the time frame is not in line with where it needs to be. If you're trying to do some of the trades in the wrong order, it'll cause a lot of problems, things of that nature. There's a lot that goes into doing a rehab, and if you haven't had some experience doing them, you'll end up missing things that will create problems down the line that will cost more money. Is a lot of what it is, and more time, which again costs even more money because a lot of people use leverage.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, everyone's getting paid along the way except for the developer, who is the one paying the interest on the loan, the one paying the contractors, the one paying for the materials, the one paying the utility bill. So yeah, I mean, very few people in that team concept have your greatest, I guess, motivations in line. So that's where you, as a project manager, when you've worked, on the first three projects, and also here recently, that's where you best align yourself with the developer, right? Because you have not only the experience, but you also, share in the motivations and understanding of what's important, for that developer.
Yes.
So now, bringing that forward, now that you have kind of honed that skill set, what are you now trying to apply that towards in terms of property scouting? Kind of explain that to folks, because you mentioned that.
Sure. So what I've been doing recently is working with people that are interested in wholesale deals, and a lot of the time, they don't necessarily have the ability to get out to the property as quickly as they would prefer, because as we all know, wholesale deals, if they're good, they run through quickly. And also, even if they are able to get out to the property, they may not necessarily be able to assess the problems that they're going to run into, a rough estimate of the rehab costs. And, even I've developed a certain amount of knowledge about some of the areas that I'm going to as well. And I tend to be able to help with that. Typically what I do is I will go in, I will take a bunch of pictures, I will run video with commentary about the problems that I see, and a rough estimate of where you would need to be rehab-wise to both in price and to get it either to some sort of minimal rental quality, or if you're planning on going past that, what it would require.
Okay, and so I know this is something that how can I put this? It's something that you viewed that you had a skill set for and a talent for, because as you just described it, anyone can think they can walk their property and take photos and videos, but what is it that you're looking for? I mean, like everyone has a camera now with a cell phone, right? That doesn't make everyone a photographer, right?
That's correct.
That's correct. I mean, so just because you walk through a house and you take, photos of this, that, and the third, doesn't mean that you can properly assess, diagnose, what the intel is there. Like, how much is it going to take to make it rent ready? How much is it going to take, to do a basic or moderate or high end flip? So, and then of course, are there any like major defect issues that you should just stay away from, or know that's there so you can negotiate accordingly? Like, Is there, black mold there that is hard to see, or is there different things, that you with a trained eye, would know to look for. So my point is, I know that in discussions we've had, through the mastermind program and helping hold you accountable to your goals, which is a very key pillar in what we do, is to somewhat convince you that this was not, how shall I put it? It wasn't a philanthropic act that you had to perform by going out to do these inspections for people. That this is a valued service that people would, willfully and they voluntarily pay for, because it's such a great service. And so the property scouting, concept is something you're trying to turn into a business, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so how are you viewing, that business taking shape? Like at this point, what does that look like, and what are your goals?
My objective with that, first I'm going to have to get my name out there and I've done some, so I'll be able to get some references, and drop a website, which should be happening, I think, sometime in the next 2 weeks. Okay. And develop my pricing structure. And you had actually given me a really good idea of perhaps having a subscription service available that would include, a set number of scouts per period. And then also, but the main objective is to, set my pricing structure, get my name out there, and explain what I'm doing to people, because I'm not really sure anyone is actually in this market, or I haven't heard anyone doing this specific type of work for investors in general. The objective is to get out to all of the RIAs and just explain who I am, what I'm doing, and what I'm offering.
I can tell you what investors do, because I do it, right? So what investors do, Fuzz, is they will try to get their contractor they have a good relationship with. Hey, I got this project that may be our next deal. Can you go take a look at 123 Main Street? I should be making an offer on that, but it depends on, what the number comes in. So can you go take a look at it and, let me know what you think. Give me a number, a rough number. I'm not going to hold you to it. Just give me a rough number. And so that's how investors get away with, quote unquote, free inspections, property inspections. Sure. Typically, investors have 2, 3, 4 contractors that they've worked with either in the past, or an investor is trying to get their business, right? And they get these contractors to do walkthroughs. Let me tell you why that concept is very, very flawed. You want to know why I know it's flawed?
Because you've done it and it hasn't worked as well as you'd like.
I've done it and it hasn't worked as well as I would like. This is why that concept is flawed. If you have a contractor and you send him through the project and you tell him, hey, well, first of all, the contractor is only going to want to go through the project if he has some type of assurance, or she has some type of assurance that they're going to get the job, right? So of course, there's kind of this wink, wink. Of course, if the number comes in right, of course you get the job, or you're top in line to get the job. Contractor walks through, takes photos, videos, so you get that same, work product, and they give you a number. They even break it down. So that contractor, do you think if they want the job, do you think they're going to give you super high numbers, accurate numbers, or maybe low numbers? And do you think it'll be consistent across all contractors that perform this service for you? What would you think? Just let's play along here.
More than likely, it will be accurate to low.
Accurate to low, okay? Because they know if they come in high, they might be outbidding themselves, right? So it's going to be accurate to low. Most times it's going to come in on the low side, and the contractor always protects themselves. Say, hey, well, I just did a cursory walkthrough. It's just an estimate. So you buy the house. You're expecting the rehab budget to be $50,000 on this $100,000 house you bought. The house is worth $250,000. So you bought a house for $150,000 renovation budget. You bought it. It's going to ARV, after value of $250,000. Now just walking through numbers so people can understand this, right? So it's a decent deal the way it is. Okay. But then after you buy the property, of course, the contractor, he had already given you a scope of work, but he's now going to, after you put down your EMD or whatever, he's going to say, well, you know what? I didn't see this or that. I didn't detail this or that. And so what happens is you start to take actions, even if it's before closing on the property, okay? It could be you put up a non-refundable deposit, okay, of $2,000 or whatever. But the point is that the contractors, a lot of times, they don't have your motivations. They're not aligned with your motivations. Whereas if you're doing property scouting independently for an investor, okay, and I know a lot of times, you know, when you work as a project manager, you know, you recommend them to bring their own contractors and you independently act as a PM, right? So when you do the scouting, you're going to give them the most accurate numbers possible because that's all you care about. You have no other biases or no hidden agendas, et cetera. And so you're more inclined to get the most accurate information if you send a third-party scout, okay, or someone that's inspecting, even if they're not a licensed inspector. You get the most accurate information if they're independent. And that's why I like not sending out my contractor who's going to actually do the job to get an initial assessment. I like my contractor to come in to give me the final number. Like, I don't want any preliminary. I want a final hard number that you're going to stick to. So that's why I think the service you're going to offer is going to be very valuable, especially if it's affordable.
Sure.
So now, why don't you contextualize for folks, you know, how your business of doing inspections and property scouting has also enabled you to get into wholesaling? Because I know that over the past, 6 months or so, you've been actually doing some scouting for us with deal finders, and you actually were able to close on your first wholesale deal. You actually were able to come in on the back end with the scouting, but also communicate it with the homeowner, or I should say the seller of the property, and acquired some skills of negotiating, understanding the wholesaling process, understanding how to assign the property, just the total process from beginning to end with wholesaling. So why don't you take people through just how that skill set of you being, project manager, understanding how to walk through and inspect the property allowed you to get in with wholesaling. And this is, for people watching, this is some way that you can potentially partner with Fuzz, is to have him do your walkthroughs and inspections, and potentially split wholesale fees or whatever the case may be with you, because you would be a valuable, trusted inspecting partner for that particular investor. So go ahead.
Oh, absolutely. One of the big things that's been very, very useful, I've found, is just being able to fully explain the process to the homeowner and show them where you're coming from, what numbers look like, and why you're, as far as they're concerned, lowballing them a lot of the times has been really useful. If you could point out all of the, defects and things that are wrong and what it's going to require to move forward on your end, just so they understand, where all the money's going and kind of where a lot of it happens. Also,
stick with that for a minute, because that's important. Because when I first started investing almost 20 years ago, clearly the internet had already, was formed and existed. But in the early 2000s, there weren't all these sites with algorithms like Zillow and a Zestimate, okay? Like Redfin and a Redfin estimate. Like all these different ways where you can, as a seller, a homeowner, you could type in your address, 123 Main Street, hit enter in Google, and have as the top, page, the first 10 organic results all be essentially, home valuation, home information based sites where you can see houses in your area. Oh, here are homes similar to yours, and then see a house down the street and that may have sold for $200,000, where is Fuzz, you're telling the person that their home's only worth $100,000. Okay, well, wait a minute, house down the street's sold for $200,000, 2 months ago. So now sellers, they say knowledge is power, right? But it's only power. Information's only powerful if it comes with knowledge and contextual understanding, right? So the information people get on the internet from, Zillow and Redfin and all these different places, they're thinking their house is worth a certain amount. Now, as investors, you have to come in and you have to already assume they've been online and they've read this information. You already have to assume that. And so you have to come in armed with the proper knowledge yourself, the proper resources and data to debunk why their house isn't worth what they think it's worth. Okay, you're not trying to mislead. You're not trying to deceive or trick them. You basically want to legitimately explain to them why the house down the street that was a full gut job rehab that now has tray ceilings, hardwood floors, quartz countertops, new cabinets, finished basement with a master suite in the basement, a full bathroom, and a deck on the back, is now worth 200, where your house is still only worth 80,000 or 100,000 because you haven't updated your kitchen and bathrooms in 20 years and your basement's unfinished. Like, so these are the things I'm sure that you talk through and walk through. But so how does that conversation go?
The conversation, I mean, I try to be as fully prepared as possible. So I will print out those comps because I know the ones they're going to be looking for. And then I'll also print out the ones that are more like their house and, try to find the ones that have pictures, try to, bring as much information to the table as I can so that when we sit down, after the walkthrough and after I point out some of whatever's going on, I like to aim for as full transparency as I possibly can. Because it's best if they know everything that's going to happen. I don't want any surprises on their end after they sign the paperwork or things go weird or anything of that nature. And, the best way to do that is to come with all of the information. So I have all this stuff printed out, nice color photos, we have explanations. Because I've gotten a beat on, you can figure out what they're going to look at because they're going to look at best case scenario, and as they should. It's completely understandable. And you have to explain to them why, it's very unlikely that is what their situation is. And so you sit down and you say, here's the stuff that you're looking at. Here's this $200,000 property down the street. But, they did all of these things. And most of the time they don't know about construction. So then I can go in to explain, well, it's going to require us to do X, Y, and Z on your property to get it up to that. And that costs approximately this much money. Mm-hmm. And then it's also like, and if you had the money to do that, you would be doing it. And then you'd be selling it for that top dollar. Yep. And if you're interested in that, I can show you a couple of RIAs to go to, but
but most times they're like, no, I just want to sell, right?
Absolutely. Because it is a somewhat rarefied skill set, and it does require a lot of time and effort and knowledge. And once you explain all of those things, most people are pretty good about understanding this. And in the back of their minds, they knew that they're not talking to you because their house can go on the market.
Of course. Yeah. If that were the case, they would talk to whatever agent's been mailing their house with postcards or magnets that go in a refrigerator, right? So they're talking to us as wholesalers, as cash buyers of properties, any area, any condition, because that's the message that, they, heard. And that's the message they know is correct. But somewhere in the middle there, they, are trying to, get the top dollar. So when you go to the properties, you take all that information. I'm assuming you take the contracts with you as well, and and do your best effort to get the properties under contract. So why don't you walk through the actual deal that closed, a few months back, the property that you got under contract with Deal Finders, and just talk through that particular case study and how you helped make that happen.
Oh, sure. So that came through Deal Finders, and I was listed as the closer for it. So they set up the meeting where the property owner and I would go and take a look through the house and then figure out a number. We, in this particular case, it was there was a tenant in place, and he didn't want her to know that he was planning on selling. So I was just an inspector doing my inspection job, taking some pictures, chatting about a few things while she had some stuff that she wanted repaired from him, which was kind of nice. Because it's like, oh, there's more repairs that need to be done.
Exactly.
And then we went and sat down at a coffee shop, and it was nice because because it was a rental, so he was an investor. His intention was to get rid of the last couple of properties that on the low end of his portfolio. So we sat down, we talked about what could happen, and I didn't really have to explain owner financing to him. Because he knew what was going on. And then, we just negotiated back and forth a little bit on what the price would be and whether or not he could, hold for about, I think it was 18 months worth. And then, we signed the contract and passed it off to our sellers. So unfortunately, it was kind of an easy one, if you will. But
well, you know what? I'm not going to break my arm by patting myself on my back. So I'm not going to do that, okay? But what I am going to say is that it may have appeared to be easy, because, of course, we had the right scripting and the right language. We were able to convince the seller to accept owner financing because of how we structured the offer and how we made two offers and made the one with the owner financing more appealing because they got a higher price. And so the reason why I say that is because if you are working, with experienced partners, like you're working with us and Deal Finders and in our mastermind program, I remember when I first got started, and I was struggling before I got my first mentor, helped me get my first 6 deals done. And so, that's the benefit of having, strategic partners and mentors, is that we help you to avoid the common mistakes, and then we make the hard look routine. And so that's, it's again, I'm not trying to, I'm saying this very humbly, but the concept of owner financing, for some people listening don't even know what that is.
Right.
So what is seller financing? So we have, students that come into our program, and we have to, break these things down as to what seller financing is and how it can be structured. So on this wholesale deal, we wholesale this property, and I believe it was on Lindale. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we wholesale this property, and we got the seller to agree to accept some of their money at closing, and then the rest of the money paid over a period of time. And the seller was willing to hold a note for that balance that was paid over a period of time. And so how that is legally documented and structured is in what's called a seller finance note. And that's what allowed our wholesale buyer to get into the property with essentially 100% financing, and then the ability to, come in with less money out of pocket, only paying closing costs, and to get a cash flowing property at very, very creative, flexible terms. So it was a win-win-win. The seller got what they wanted in terms of price. The buyer got what they wanted in terms of a turnkey cash flowing rental, which, by the way, you helped to oversee the repairs that were negotiated that had to be made before the closing happened. So again, all the creativity, the transactional engineering with these various deals, whether it's Deal Finders or whether it's deals that happen within the mastermind program, we try to make it look as easy as possible, because we pretty much done and had experience with almost every deal under the sun. So anything that you're looking for in terms of growth of your business beside property scouting. I know you manage an apartment building up in Pennsylvania. Is there anything that you're looking to do?
Yeah, I'd like to put a couple of flips on the books, or some BRRRs, and get a little capital, and then start seriously looking into some small to medium-sized multifamily, preferably up in Pennsylvania, but that's not imperative.
Okay.
Yeah.
So some multifamily, and also some. So you're dropping a lot of acronyms here for some BRRRs.
I'm sorry.
Some buy, renovate, refinance, rent, and repeat. So that's a acronym that's been coined by the Bigger Pockets community, but essentially, fix and holds that you're going to refinance, pull most of your cash out, hopefully all your cash out, maybe even better than that, get some cash out. So I should say, pull most of your cash, get most of your cash back, and then hopefully get more than your cash back, get some cash out. That was very inarticulate, but I cleaned it up. So, so the point is, with the fix and holds, if you refinance, hopefully you can get all your cash out. So yeah, I mean, that'd be cool. The market right now has turned a little bit, and it's ripe for fix and holds, for BRRRRs. So, with that, any closing words that you have for folks watching that have now listened to your story, how you started, with a partner? I think, partnering is a great way for people to start, because again, you get to leverage other people's strengths, okay, to support your weaknesses. And as you heard me say, we all have weaknesses. No one can be an expert at everything. No one can be flush and rich with everything. That is capital, time, experience, credit. I mean, we all have weaknesses. So anything you want to share with folks about, your experience and recommendations for them getting started?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is to, I guess in some ways, ignore a lot of the marketing that I've seen for, the last 20 years. It's not easy. It can be done. It takes effort. It takes knowledge. It takes preparation. You have to study. And again, it's really important that you can ignore some of those things if you work with other people. And just remember that just because you're not getting 100% of a deal or 100% of whatever's going on doesn't mean that it's better to get part of a deal than none of no deal, if that makes sense, or all of no deal, if you will.
Let me see if I can bring that home to people. So it's better to get a small percent of something than 100% of nothing.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I think people understand. Yeah, it's better to get a small percent of something than 100% of nothing. Because a lot of people want to do everything themselves and be a lone wolf because no, I don't want to share. I don't want to share my pizza. I don't want to give someone else a slice. So yeah, you're better off getting percent of something than 100% of nothing. That's I mean, oh my gosh. So yeah. So go ahead.
And you don't do anything in this business on your own. Period.
You can't.
There are always other people involved, and if you treat them well, in the end, they will treat you well. And one of the things I really appreciate about the real estate business that is not necessarily so in not a lot of the trades and a number of the other things, especially with investors, is how helpful everyone is. Because if you spend a little bit of time in the business, you realize that one, not most of the deals you're going to come across are not going to be appropriate for you. You're going to have whatever your section, your niche is, and you're going to be able to pass those on to other people, and in turn, they'll do it with you. And the thing I really like about real estate is how helpful everyone is, because they're so well aware of the fact that, A, there's a ton of deals out there. There's more than enough for everybody to get through. And that eventually, if you work well with people and your name, is one that's spoken as someone who, is worth working with and does things properly, like, it will always come back to you in the end.
Yeah. So definitely words of wisdom there. So Fuzz, I want to thank you for taking the time for sharing your story with everyone. You've been a valuable strategic partner for us with Deal Finders, with the Mastermind program. I know folks have now formed relationships with you where you do property scouting for them and trust, your expertise. Looking forward to you actually taking that business public, even on a grander scale, and helping you do that. And just proud of you with the growth that you've had over the last, 3+ years, and coming into, forming your own separate businesses and building multiple streams of income. So again, thank you for taking the time, and look to talk to you soon.
Sounds great.
All right, Fuzz. Take care, bud.
Bye.
Bye-bye.